You know, we'll talk occasionally when you talk about trying to verify elections and you talk about honesty in elections and so on. The response that we get from the left is that we're engaging in voter suppression. And what they're basically saying is we're depriving people of their rights to vote by trying to make sure that they have the right to vote in the first place. And when you hear about voter suppression, they're talking about somebody's having their right taken away. But when we talk about voter fraud, we always seem to come up short when it comes to the big moral equation. In other words, the left has basically said it's better to have voter fraud than voter suppression. In other words, it's better that some people who may not be supposing to vote can vote than taking away the legitimate vote of people who can vote. That's their argument. My argument is voter fraud is voter suppression. Because if somebody is voting illegally, for whatever reason, they are suppressing my vote. They are taking my vote away. If somebody votes more than once, they're suppressing my vote. So the first thing we have to do is just get this moral equivalency out of the way and say all we're trying to do is return to this idea of one person, one vote. How hard is that, really? Not so tough. So we have some very interesting people up here with us today. Ruth Weiss is a teacher for 34 years and has been basically involved with just about everything in the school system, knows how these things work on the inside. Linda Paine is the president of EIP, the Election Integrity Project here in California. And Malcolm McGough is an American who was born overseas in Australia, like so many of our finest Americans are. And their radical, dangerous, insane, lunatic, crazy, racist idea is that they and their volunteers are going to be out there on election day to make sure that one person, one vote does not apply more equally to other people than to some other people. And this is very, very important. You know why? Well, I probably can best explain this with a personal example. My father voted Republican until the day he died, and then he started voting Democrat. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our friends from the Election Integrity Project.
Well, thank you. On that light note, if you will indulge me, I'd like to share a short fairy tale with you, remembering that fairy tales work and we all enjoy them because they have an important moral at the center, and they also are based on the symbolism that connects to the truth of life. So once there was a utopian land where the people ran the government and every election was honest and fair. And the people of this land were happy because they knew that if there were a problem ever, that they would have control at the ballot box and everything would be fine. But as the years passed, people began to feel a little uneasy, and they sensed that something in their electoral process just might not be right. And so they jumped out of their lethargy and they decided to take a closer look. They studied the laws that governed the process, and they found that by and large, those laws were very good. Nevertheless, they still continued to feel a sense of unease. And so they decided to take an even closer look. And to their dismay, they discovered that consistently throughout the land, those wonderful laws that they had found to be good were not being enforced. In fact, they were being systematically and intentionally ignored. The system was corrupt from within. The voter rolls, which were mandated to be protected and researched and cleaned, were bloated and in complete disrepair. Tens of thousands of deceased and duplicate registrations were still on the voter list, and anyone could claim and cast those ballots with no fear of detection. So when Election Day arrived, they put their eyes on the process even more closely, and what they witnessed was chaos, lawlessness, and corruption. They found poll workers from a foreign land taking control of the polling places and all of the voters, not allowing them to vote for who they wanted to vote for, but taking over and telling them where they had to put their mark. They found ballots of people from just one party were being put through a machine that instead of scanning that ballot was shredding it. And even when they found that out, they simply cleaned out the confetti and continued to use that shredder to destroy more ballots throughout the day. People from an entire ethnic community mailed in their vote-by-mail ballots, all of which were thrown into the corner at the registrar's office, never processed and never counted. Mail ballots voters were not identified on the check-in rosters so that people who had already mailed in their ballot could show up on election day and cast a new ballot, and no one would ever know that they had voted twice. University students were forced to cast provisional ballots because otherwise they would fail their social science class, and they had to vote in places where they were not registered. And as a result, many of them were disenfranchised as it was discovered that they voted in a county that was not their own. Voters were routinely urged and often required to vote communally at open tables in cooperative groups, which forced voters to vote where other people could see the markings they were making on their ballot, which disenfranchised the very weakest among us, those who were under the domination of others or a neighborhood expectation. Large numbers of voters who expected a mail ballot never received one, and they went to the polls to vote provisionally on election day, but their ballots went somewhere, and it's very likely that their vote had been stolen. The list of stories could go on and on. But the people were not dismayed. They figured that if they reported these problems to the officials, that the officials would certainly jump and right the wrongs that they had reported. Sadly, the people discovered that those officials were part of the problem. So in response to the citizens' input, just to make sure, the leaders of the land decided they needed to respond. And so they began to start to create new laws that took away the protections of those old good laws, leaving the electoral process a facade where the people believed they had an election, when in reality, the people in charge were determining the results. So the people tried again and again and again to oust those corrupted officials. And those officials responded by making sure that their coup was complete. They invited and facilitated a foreign invasion so that thousands, perhaps millions of easily manipulated people with no understanding of the culture or the beauty of the governmental structure in their land became an army of political robots doing the bidding of those leaders illegally and unconstitutionally at the ballot box, and the constitutional republic was gone, and an oligarchy, the rule of a powerful few, was left in its place. Now, I'm sure I haven't fooled anybody in this room. It becomes very obvious immediately that I am not talking about a strange and fairy tale land, but I am talking about the land you and I live in, the state of California. There is still hope, however. We're starting to wake up. All of those watchdogs in the fairy tale are the Election Integrity Project California volunteers. And for 7, going on 8 years now, we have been documenting all of this stuff that I've talked about and so much more. But right now, we need you to see the handwriting on the wall. And we need you to wake up, to join hands, and to fight with us, because we are only as strong as the numbers that we can put out there against this great evil. We can restore this republic. And here is how we're going to do it. We are going to create an army. We're going to join hands. We are going to halt the shredding of our state and federal constitution in the state. And we are going to make sure that the government again fears us instead of the other way around. We are going to come together. We are going to create networks throughout our communities, create teams, and then we're going to get out there and we are going to shed light on the process, because the Darkness hides the cockroaches, and they don't like it when anybody's looking. So we are going to be looking, and they will see nothing but eyes on everything they are doing. But the window of opportunity is fast closing. Make no doubt about it. Trevor Loudon was absolutely correct. We have very little time left. We cannot wait until it's more convenient. We cannot wait until we have a little bit more time in our schedule. We cannot wait until our kids are off to that institution of higher learning that is going to indoctrinate them. We cannot wait until we're finished taking that trip around the world. We cannot wait. The time is now. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the president and founder of Election Integrity Project California, Linda Paine.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Malcolm. You all have been doing an amazing job in California. Many of you may not know that in 2016, my family and I were forced to flee the state of California because all of my family were gone by the time my husband retired. But I'm fighting from Arizona, and there are amazing opportunities that have opened up that I'm going to tell you about right now. Thank you to Ruth for the massive number of, and Malcolm for the miles they've driven to speak with all of you. We are making major changes so that we can reach more. As Ruth said, the time is now. In the last 8 years, we have trained about 7,000 citizens across the state of California. But 1 million citizens have left the state of California, and many of them have been the observers who've been working. We need you who have never done it before to now rise up and work with us. Ruth, what's the next slide? Thank you. The issue here is citizen oversight. I want to tell you that in the state of California, this deep blue state, we are the only state that has the level of freedom to observe every aspect of the election process, to ask questions, to document, and to report. The stunning thing to me in moving to Arizona is Arizona cannot do what we do. They can only observe the polls if they get permission from one of the political parties, and guess who's not giving them permission? I dug deeper, and what's happening in the rest of the country is the same thing. Look at the election in that we just had, Pennsylvania. The lawyer for the Republican Party wanted to observe the processing of the ballots. He could not do it until he got permission from the party heads. There's something wrong with that picture. Folks, once again, it's going to be California that's going to lead the way. We are going to, as Malcolm says, blow the lid off of California through documentation. We have tens of thousands of documented pieces of evidence that we have, in fact, provided to Landmark Legal Foundation and Judicial Watch. We worked hard to take that documentation for 7 years to the authorities in California. We were ignored, we were ignored, we were ignored. In 2017, we spoke with J. Christian Adams and said, what do we do now? For the first time in 2016, we saw criminal behavior in the polls not only in the polls, but by people wearing the name tag that said Registrar of Voters Office. I'm not going to give you the details because many of those cases are now part of a case moving forward, but I can tell you, California is now moving into chaos. We need now every citizen in every community to bring together people they know within your circle of influence. It doesn't have to be political. It can be members of your church, people that you work with. But if you're not observing the polls in your community will not be protected. What these firms have said now, especially Landmark Legal, we need more documentation. They're building multiple cases, not just one. The silver bullet has been the documentation in California of the electoral process. We now need to prove that the issues that are happening, that Ruth mentioned, are not just happening in one community here and one county there. They are happening across the state, and the issue is, in fact, systemic. We've already proved it. Now we need to solidify it. We have one great opening that has happened because of the work of so many in California, and that is because the word is finally getting out to the rest of the country of the work that you all are doing here. For the first time, Election Integrity Project California was invited to sponsor and organize a panel next weekend in Phoenix. The Western Conservative Conference. We are bringing top-notch attorneys, J. Christian Adams, Landmark Legal Foundations, Mike O'Neill, Hans von Sporskowski, and John Fund. They will sit on one side of the table. Our team will sit on the other side. Our chief analyst, Ruth, regarding legislation, I'll be talking about the criminal behavior. Randy Burholtz, an attorney who has given us pro bono time since 2012 to help San Diego County when there's an issue. And what we're going to try to push, and we need your help through calling or even coming, a paradigm shift in the conversation. The other states must be given the freedom that we have here to document the observations of their own political process. These attorneys are willing to work with Election Integrity Project California to change the federal law, NVRA, to update it, to make sure that the loopholes that are making it possible for the manipulation of our system to be closed, and to give every citizen in this country the rights that we have here in California to observe. I want to encourage you, Californians, don't misunderstand the freedoms that we have here in California. We will lose them if we don't take this 2018 and observe every poll, every ballot processing, 60 days of ballot processing, tremendous opportunity to throw ballots away, to put them in a corner, to accept ballots where signatures don't match. We need you out there. Not Election Integrity Project, but the state of California needs you to turn it around. This is the time. We have a table outside. We will tell you how to get involved. We didn't have time to do it now. But I am so proud to be a Californian, even though I'm displaced in Arizona. But being in Arizona, I've learned the rest of the country does not have our freedoms. And it makes me excited to come back and continue the work here. We are going to blow the lid off. We are going to make a difference. We're already doing it. And I'd like to have Malcolm come up and talk to you about that.
What can I say but g'day? Stalin said it's enough for the people to know that they voted. You know, America is the greatest land this world has ever seen. And it gave the world a gift, and that gift was freedom. It gave the world freedom when they said that our freedoms do not come from a king or a queen or a pharaoh or a president even. It comes from God. And if it comes from God, it can't be taken away by man. But we're at the edge of the cliff, people. We're at the edge of the cliff where we are giving that freedom away. Your freedom was wrapped up in the highest law in the land, the first time a country had ever done that, your constitution. But as Trevor Loudon said, if we don't win the next 4, our constitution is going to be shredded. Our constitution is going to be shredded by those that don't give a damn about this country. They don't give a damn because they want to bring this country back to the secular pack. They want to bring it back to a pack so that they can control you, the middle class. They want you disappeared. They want this country destroyed for their own purposes. And if we don't take control of the election process, if we don't take control here in California, because remember, as goes California, so goes America. If we don't take control here in California, America is lost. So it all starts here. It starts here in California by you people waking up and believing that we have a problem here. Believing that there is a need for you and your fellow Californians to get out there and do something about what's happening here in California. Because if we don't fix California, you might as well go to Australia. And if you go to Australia, and that's why I'm here, it's a selfish reason, because as goes America, so goes the world. So if America goes over the spiritual and fiscal cliff, my country's next. And why is Trevor here? Because his country will be next after that. And then Canada, if Canada hasn't already gone. And then England. And the West is done. America was brought into existence by God for a reason. To be a beacon of hope and light for the rest of the world to follow. And that light is dimming very quickly. We've got 4 election cycles. Another 3 actually, 18, 20 and 22. If we don't get it right, guys, we're done. Don't think I'm just kidding here. This country is done if we don't get it right over the next 3 election cycles. Because if we don't get it right, those that get into power will tear up your constitution as quickly as they get inside the front door of the White House. And how will they do it? They will do it by issuing illegal executive orders. Those executive orders will then be challenged through the various courts to the US Supreme Court, which by then will have been established with liberal, progressive, left judges. And then it will be ordained into law. Those that say we could lose this country for 40 years, they're lying to you. It's not 40 years, people. It's forever. Because once your constitution is struck down, it's done. So I implore you to tell everybody about the importance of Election Integrity Project, because you can put all the money you like into the game. You can put the best candidate into the game. But if the playing field is uneven, it's a waste of time. If you know that you're going into an election and at half-time the playing field changes or the laws change, or somebody cheats you out of the ballots, why would you even bother? So election integrity, guys, is the start point of fixing California. It's not putting up candidates, it's fixing up the election process here in this state now. Because if we don't do it now, we're done. Thank you very much.
We have 21 seconds left. And so what I would like to say in the 21 seconds is you in California are in fact the heroes. You stepped up in 2012 when nobody else was doing it in the country. There was a county in Texas that started this. That's where we all got trained. We went to their training in 2011, and after that training, I realized we can't do in Texas what they're doing in Texas, because this is California. There was a handful of people, 4 women, who started this project, and we began to dig in and study the laws. We did what nobody else did, is we kept it going now for 8 years. We cannot quit when we're about to win. We have documented the truth that there not only is voter fraud, but our electoral process is in fact corrupt and easily manipulated. That is why we cannot vote out people who shut down water to our farmlands. We cannot vote out people who are destroying parental rights, Second Amendment rights, our school system. We cannot vote out people who are flooding our state with so many people that they have to live on the streets in tents. We cannot vote these people out without a fair and honest election. A republic. We are a constitutional republic. Please help us change the conversation. We are not a democracy. A democracy is an election by the majority. We are a country that is governed by representation. So we are a representative republic. Without a fair and honest election, we do not have a republic. This 2018, in the primaries, many of you are thinking, I'll do it in November. Oh my goodness, please change your thinking. We must be out en masse by the thousands in every community in the country. If we can, in the state, we know we can. We have to be out there documenting, observing, especially in the Registrar of Voters office. The processing of the ballots, critical. And we will train you. Please come to the table. We've got materials for you. You can sign up. We can get you involved. We're going to do much more through our computers using Zoom. We continue with the company to have challenges where our communications are blocked. We tried to set up this is an example. We sent out emails to set up a meeting in LA County tomorrow because LA County is in fact being sued. Only a handful of people got the emails. People are not hearing from us. I've asked our security people to look into it. How is it that Ruth and I are sending out emails and nobody's getting them? How is it that I make phone calls and people don't hear their phones ring? I leave messages and people don't hear the voicemail. We have to overcome this, and we can, but we're probably going to need to go to the old-fashioned meet in person, or train on Zoom. If you think you're supposed to hear from Ruth or from me and you don't, please call us. We're going to solve what's happening to our communications. It's not the first time. In 2016, our hotlines were shut down. By who? I don't know. But those of you who observed did your job anyway. You made the documentation and you got it to us, even though you couldn't reach us. So yes, this is going to be a challenge. Do not fear. We are not afraid. We will keep getting up and fighting back, and we need you to join us in this fight. Thank you.